बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। रब्बी इश्रह ली सदरी व यस्सिर ली अमरी वहलुल उक़्दतम मिन लिसानी यफ़क़हू क़ौली। I am Dr. Sadia Amir, MBBS MPhil Microbiology, working as Associate Professor in the Abba Medical College. This is my second lecture with you students, third year MBBS students. This lecture is about the structure of a bacterial cell. We will I will teach you the structure of bacterial cell according to the few key points. First, I will tell you about the classification of the bacteria, then the structure of the bacteria. The structure of the bacteria is further discussed in subheadings like the cell wall, cell membrane, spores, cytoplasm, and structures outside the cell. First, I will tell you about the classification of bacteria, how we can classify the bacteria. To understand the bacterial morphology, it is very important. First, we have to classify the bacteria, so we can easily compare the different bacteria and we can easily diagnose what is the causative agent of any disease or any pathogenesis. There are three basic features which are used for the classification of bacteria. Number one is shape of bacteria, number two is arrangement, and number three is size. First, I will tell you about the shape of the bacteria. The shape of how we can see the bacteria. We can see the bacteria in any patient sample or in any sample under the microscope because bacteria are not visible through the naked eye. Microscopic appearance of any bacteria is very, very much important for its lab diagnosis, for its lab identification. In the labs, if we have to identify any bacteria in any patient sample, we will examine that sample under the microscope. When we see under the microscope any bacteria, first we concentrate on its shape. How it is looking like? What is the shape of that bacteria? The shape of the bacteria, it may be spherical, which is called coccus, singular coccus, plural cocci. Bacteria may be spherical in shape. Bacteria may be rod-like in shape, elongated rod-like in shape. They are called bacillus, singular, and its plural is bacilli. Bacteria may be spiral in shape. Those bacteria who are spiral in shape, they are called spirochetes. There are some bacteria which are variable in their shapes. Those bacteria are called the pleomorphic bacteria. Pleomorphic means many shapes. They are variable in their shapes. The shape of the bacteria is determined by its rigid cell wall. In the previous lecture, I told you bacteria are the prokaryotes. The prokaryotic cell wall is made up of peptidoglycan. So, the bacteria have rigid cell wall. This cell wall is responsible for the shape of the bacteria, structural support for the bacteria, for its characteristic shape. This is very much important, this rigid cell wall. The second criteria is the arrangement of the bacteria. When the bacteria undergo the cell division, how the prokaryotes will divide? In the previous lecture, I told you bacteria, they divide, their method of replication is binary fission. At the time of the cell division, degree of the attachment and orientation of the attachment. These two criteria will determine how the bacteria will arrange in any sample or how the bacteria will arrange. Number three is the size of the bacteria. The size of the bacteria, it ranges from the 0.2 to 5 micrometer. In the previous lecture, I told you we will compare the size of any microorganism with the human red blood cell. The human red blood cell is 7 micrometer. The bacteria, they range in size from 0.2 to 5 micrometer. The smallest bacteria is the Mycoplasma. These are the group of the microorganisms which fall in the genus Mycoplasma. They are the smallest microorganisms which are capable of living outside the host. Bacteria can live outside the host. The longest bacteria, and it is about the size of the largest virus. The smallest bacteria, which is Mycoplasma, it is about as the same size of the largest virus, which is pox virus. The longest bacteria are the rods. In this picture, the different shapes and arrangement of bacteria is shown. Those bacteria which are spherical or circular in shape, we call them coccus or cocci. Here, these bacteria, they are arranged in pairs, in the form of pair, and they are spherical in shape. If we see bacteria under the microscope and we see that they are spherical in shape, we will say that they are coccus. Next point, we will see how they are arranged. If they are arranged in the form of pairs, we simply can say that they are diplococci. They are diplococci. If the spherical bacteria called coccus, they are arranged in the form of the long chains. They look very beautiful. Long chains, just like the beads in a thread. They are long chains. We can simply say that they are cocci, and if they are arranged in shapes, they are streptococci. At least we can tell about the genus. If we can't tell about the species. It is Streptococcus pneumoniae, Streptococcus pyogenes. We cannot comment about the species. From the shape and orientation arrangement, we can say about the genus. This bacteria belongs to this genus. If the spherical bacteria, which are circular in shape, they are arranged in the form of the clusters, just like a bunch of grapes. If they are arranged in the form of cluster, we will say that number 1, they are cocci. Arrangement, they are arranged in the form of clusters. They are called staphylococci. They are called staphylococci. And if they are arranged in the form of tetrads, 4 cocci, they are called sarcina. These arrangements, these 1, 2 and 3, these arrangements are very much important. If we see under the microscope and we will find the bacteria arranged in the form of the rods, these are rods, we will say that they are bacilli. They are bacilli. These are the rods with square ends. They are called bacilli. If the rods, they have flagella, these structures which are the fibers which are protruding from the cell and they extend outside the cell, they are called flagella. They are responsible for the motility of the bacteria. We will discuss it in detail later. If the rods are flagellated, they have flagella, we can say that it belongs to Salmonella. And this is the bacteria which is rod in shape and it has spores. It means they are spore forming and they belong to the genus Clostridium. If the bacteria under the microscope, they look like the spirals, they are arranged in the form of the coils, spiral shaped. If they are loosely arranged, we will say that they are spirochetes. If these spirals are they may be tightly coiled, they also belong to the spirochetes but to a different genus. If the bacteria, they are coma shaped, they are rods, but they are just like the comas. Coma shaped, they are called vibrios. And if the bacteria, they are rod-like in shape and they have flagella at one side, 4, 5, 6, many flagella at one end, they are called Helicobacter. So, from their shape and from their arrangement, we can comment about the genus of the bacteria. We can make a presumptive diagnosis that this will be this bacteria. So arrangement and shape is very much important. This diagram is from your book. It shows the bacterial morphology. Picture A, it shows the cocci. These spherical bacteria called coccus, they are arranged in the form of the clusters. We will say that they are staphylococci. If the spherical bacteria called coccus, they are arranged in the form of chains, they are streptococci. A3 picture shows that the bacteria are spherical in shape and arranged in the form of a pear. But look, their ends, they have pointed ends. They have pointed ends, they are called Streptococcus pneumoniae. Now, very carefully, if we examine the shape of the bacteria, we can comment about the genus as well as about the species, Streptococcus pneumoniae. Then after that, we will confirm it by performing the further biochemical test. A4 picture, the spherical bacteria, the circular or spherical bacteria, they are arranged in the form of a pear, but they are kidney shaped. They are beans, like the beans. Bean shaped, they are called Neisseria. Gram-negative cocci, they are Neisseria. The picture B, it tells about the rods. If the bacteria are elongated, just like the rods, with square ends, they are called bacillus. If the rod-shaped bacteria, they are rods, but with rounded ends, or they have flagella. With rounded ends, they are called salmonella. If the rods, they are club-shaped, just like the drumsticks. If they are club-shaped, they belong to the Corynebacterium. Don't confuse about these after listening the difficult names of the bacteria. When you will read the chapter of classification of bacteria, in which all the bacteria, they are classified in the gram-positive, gram-negative, cocci, rods. You have to memorize their names. Then it will be, with time, it will be familiar for you. These rod-shaped bacteria, they have very sharp, pointed ends. They are fusiform. And these are coma-shaped rods which belong to the group of the vibrios. Picture C, it shows the spiral-shaped bacteria. If both bacteria are spiral-shaped, but this shape, they are loosely coiled. They are loosely coiled. They belong to the spirochetes. Relaxed, loosely coiled, they belong to the genus Borrelia in the spirochetes. If this coil is tightly coiled, if the spiral-shaped bacteria is tightly coiled, then they belong to the Treponema. Both are spirochetes, tightly coiled and loosely coiled, Treponema. So, the bacterial morphology is very important to understand about the bacteria. This picture, it will show the basic structure of the bacteria. You have already studied in your the previous years about the structure of the bacteria. Bacteria are prokaryotic cells. Here the outer, we will see little bit the labeling of this structure of the bacteria. This green covering is the cell wall. This is the outermost covering of a cell, bacterial cell. This is cell wall. Outside the cell wall is the capsule. Inside the cell wall is the cytoplasmic membrane. This is the cytoplasm. In this cytoplasm, this area is the nucleoid region in which the genetic material, DNA and RNA are present. And these small circular beads like dots, these are ribosomes. This long thread, it is called flagella. Some bacteria have flagella. They are motile bacteria. Flagella is responsible for the motility of the bacteria. They are flagellated bacteria are motile. Some bacteria don't have flagella. They are non-motile. Here there are small threads which are outside the capsule and they surround the whole of the bacteria. They are called pili. They are responsible for the pathogenesis of the bacteria. Now we will discuss the structure of the bacterial cell stepwise. First of all, I will tell you about the cell wall. The cell wall of the prokaryotic cells or the bacteria, it is made up of peptidoglycan. The bacterial cell wall is made up of peptidoglycan. It is the outermost component of all the bacteria. All the prokaryotes, all the bacteria, they have a cell wall which is the outermost covering. There is only one exception, which is mycoplasma. In the previous lecture, we discussed a table in which it was mentioned that one bacteria don't have a cell wall. It is mycoplasma. It has cell membrane. There are some surface features which are external to the cell wall. Like this, in this picture, the external to the cell wall is capsule, pili, flagella. Here it is written the same. So surface features external to the cell wall are the flagella, pili, capsule. It is composed of peptidoglycan. What are the functions of the cell wall? Cell wall is responsible for the structural support of the cell. It provides shape to the cell. It maintains its shape. It provides a cell wall is responsible for the bacteria to withstand any media which have the low osmotic pressure. If we place a bacteria in a solution which has the low osmotic pressure as compared to the interior of the bacteria, the cell wall will be responsible for the bacteria to withstand that solution. For example, water. It will maintain the shape of the cell so that the cell will not swell up. So, the cell wall is responsible for the shape of the bacteria. To understand the cell wall, first I will tell you how you can see the bacteria when you will examine any sample of a patient under the microscope. You cannot see the bacteria or causative organisms directly. First, you have to stain that sample. For example, a specimen of pus is we received a specimen of a patient which is pus. We want to see the causative organism. First of all, we will take a glass slide, make a take a small drop from the pus specimen and spread it over the glass slide. We will make a smear of that sample directly from the sample. Then we will stain that smear. After staining, we will examine this glass slide under the microscope to see the bacteria or to see the causative organism. Then we send that sample for further processing to culture it or to perform the other test. When we stain the slide, we can examine the causative organisms, for example bacteria or any other organism. So first, before discussing the cell wall in detail, I will tell you how we can stain the bacteria. Most of the bacteria, they are stained by the Gram stain. This is one of the technique how we can see the bacteria. We stain the smear through the Gram staining procedure. When you will come to the college and perform the practicals, we will teach you and you yourself perform the Gram staining in the lab. Then the slide you will Gram stain, you will examine that slide, and then you can understand very well how the bacteria look like, what is their shape, arrangement, what is Gram staining, Gram positive bacteria, Gram negative bacteria. Gram staining, I will give you a brief review because I want to tell one or two very important points which are responsible for the structural differences between the Gram positive and Gram negative bacteria. So I will tell you a brief view about the Gram staining. Gram stain. This staining procedure, it was developed in the 1884 by the Danish physician Christian Gram. It is the most important procedure in the microbiology. It separates most of the bacteria in two groups. One is Gram positive, other is Gram negative. The Gram positive bacteria, they stain blue. When we see the smear after staining under the microscope, we will see all the Gram positive bacteria, they are blue in color. Whatever their shape, whether they are cocci, whether they are bacilli, they are blue in color. And the Gram negative bacteria, they stain red in color. So we can easily differentiate when we see a slide, the bacteria are blue in color or red in color, Gram positive or Gram negative. The Gram stain involves the further following 4-step procedure. Number 1 step, first we will pour the basic dye on the smear. The basic dye is crystal violet dye. This dye is blue in color. It will stain all the bacteria blue, whether it is Gram positive, whether it is Gram negative. This basic dye will stain all the bacteria in the smear blue. The second step, we will add iodine solution. It acts as a mordant. This step is very much important. The iodine solution, which acts like a mordant, it is added to form a crystal violet iodine complex. Never forget this complex. This complex is very important. This complex will determine the color of the bacteria. Crystal violet iodine complex, all the cells still they are blue. Number 3rd step. This step is decolorization step. We will add the organic solvent such as the acetone or ethanol alcohol. This acts as a decolorizer. What this decolorizer will do? It will extract all the blue dye from the bacteria out. Here lies a difference. Those bacteria which are till that step, we don't know whether this smear contains Gram positive bacteria or Gram negative bacteria. But at the step of decolorization, the decolorizer will extract the blue crystal violet dye they extract out the dye to a greater degree from the Gram negative bacteria, because the Gram negative bacterial cell wall is thin. It has few layers of peptidoglycan. This is responsible for the pink color of the Gram negative. Gram negative bacteria, they are lipid rich, thin walled peptidoglycan, so that gram-negative bacteria, they are lipid-rich, thin-walled peptidoglycan, so it will extract the blue dye to a greater degree, greater extent than from the lipid-poor, thick-walled gram-positive bacteria. So we can say that the gram-positive bacteria cell wall is thick-walled peptidoglycan, and gram-negative bacteria cell wall is thin-walled peptidoglycan. So the gram-negative organisms, they appear colorless because they lose all the blue dye. The blue dye is extracted out, so they will be colorless. The gram-positive bacteria, they remain blue. The fourth step, then we will add the counter stain, which is the red dye, safranin. When we add the red dye, safranin, it will stain the decolorized gram-negative cells red or pink, but the gram-positive bacteria, they will not take the red dye because they are already blue. They will remain blue. So I think so. Now you have understand well why the gram-positive bacteria they look blue, and why the gram-negative bacteria they look pink. Now why I am discussing all this procedure, this technique you will perform in the practicals, to understand, to tell about some of the complicated concept. For example, number 1, if we miss this step, this step number 2, in which the iodine solution is added, if we omit this step in the gram iodine, in the gram staining procedure, and gram iodine is not added, what will happen? Gram-negative bacteria, they will stain blue rather than pink, because when we add the decolorizer, organic solvent, ethanol or acetone, when we add this decolorizer cannot remove, because this iodine solution is not added. So the crystal violet iodine complex is not formed. So when we add the decolorizer, it will remove only the crystal violet iodine complex, but it cannot remove the crystal violet alone. We have not added iodine, no crystal violet iodine complex is formed. So on adding the decolorizer, it cannot remove the crystal violet dye alone. So all the cells will be blue. Gram-negative will be blue, gram-positive will be blue. Gram-positive bacteria also stain blue when the gram iodine is not added. They are blue. And the gram-negative bacteria, they will be blue before adding this decolorizer, because we did not add this iodine solution. It did not form the complex. Decolorizer will extracts out only the complex crystal violet iodine complex. If the iodine is not added, no complex is formed, it will not be extracted out, because decolorizer cannot extract out the crystal violet dye alone. So all the bacteria will look blue. This is very important step. The gram stain is useful in 2 ways. In the identification of the bacteria, in the laboratory, if we have to identify the bacteria, we will do the staining procedure. And I told you, most of the bacteria, they can be stained, they can be visualized by the gram staining. Number 2, when we have stained the bacteria, we have diagnosed that they are gram positive or gram negative. Then it will be easy for us to select any antibacterial drug, any antibiotic. The selection of the antibiotic is dependent upon whether it is gram positive, because gram positive bacteria, they have a different coverage, good coverage of antibiotics, and gram negative bacteria, they have different antibiotics coverage. So this coverage of selection of antibiotics It will depends upon the gram staining. For example, the penicillin G, it is good for the gram-positive bacteria to kill. They kill the gram-positive bacteria, but its coverage is not so good for the gram-negative bacteria. However, there are some limitations or some exceptions in everything. However, not all the bacteria can be seen in the gram stain. Some bacteria we cannot visualize, we cannot see through the gram staining. We have to use the other techniques to visualize them. For the very important example of this is the Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Mycobacterium tuberculosis. This bacteria is the causative organism of the tuberculosis. It cannot be seen through the gram staining. We have to use the other staining techniques. The alternative microscopic approach to the gram stain is also described later. So, this is the same gram staining technique is described in this picture form. Crystal violet, gram iodine, the blue, decolorizer, gram positive are still blue, gram negative are colorless. When we add a saffron in, gram positive are still blue, gram negative are pink in color. Demerits of gram stain. The gram stain has low sensitivity, especially when we perform the gram staining directly on the sample, patient sample. If we make a smear directly from a patient sample and stain it and examine it under the microscope, it has very low sensitivity. It is very difficult, rarely we can see the bacteria, the causative organisms. So, if we want to identify the causative organism, first we culture that sample. Culture means we inoculate that patient sample on different already prepared, ready to use culture medias. We incubate it in the incubator for 24 hours. After 24 hours, we get a live culture of the causative organism which is responsible in that patient sample. Then we will, from this culture, it has a lot of bacteria because almost 1 lakh bacteria per ml. If this amount of bacteria is present in the patient sample, then we can see 1 bacteria per microscopic field. I will repeat it. If a patient sample has 1 lakh bacteria per ml of blood, then we can see 1 bacteria per microscopic field. So, in most of the diseases, this amount of bacteria is not present. We will culture that sample, incubate it overnight. After 24 hours, we will examine and we get a live culture. The number of organisms is increased many folds. Then we make a smear from that culture. We will stain it and then we will examine it. Then it is good. Staining technique is good. So this is low sensitivity. But here is one exception, which is meningococcemia. Meningococcemia, its causative organism is Neisseria meningitidis, which is a gram-negative cocci. Gram-negative cocci. In this disease, in this condition, the number of bacteria is very high in the blood, so we can directly examine that patient's blood. Otherwise, we will incubate it and then we will see the causative organism. To tell what was the purpose to tell you about the gram staining technique is that you can understand the cell wall of the gram positive and the gram negative bacteria. The cell wall of the gram positive and gram negative bacteria, they differ in different aspects in their structure, their thickness and chemical composition. This is your bookish diagram. It is very important. In some previous papers, in the final exams, this diagram is asked for 2 or 3 marks. Draw this diagram, draw the cell wall of gram positive bacteria, or draw the cell wall of gram-negative bacteria, 2 marks or 3 marks, and label it. So this diagram is very much important. This shows the cell wall of gram-positive bacteria. See, the gram-positive bacteria, they have, I told you, they have thick layer of peptidoglycan. This is shown the peptidoglycan, thick-walled peptidoglycan, many layers of peptidoglycan, as compared to the gram-negative bacteria, which has a very thin layer of peptidoglycan, which is responsible for the gram staining to retain the dye. Outside this peptidoglycan is the outer membrane. Here this is the capsule. The capsule is also present in some gram-negative bacteria. Okay, in the gram-positive bacteria, the thick layer peptidoglycan. In the gram-negative, thin layer peptidoglycan. The gram-positive bacteria, they have certain surface structures which extends out or protrudes out from the cell. They are called flagella. This is flagella. This is teichoic acid. Teichoic acid is present only in the gram-positive cell wall. They are not present in the gram-negative cell wall. These are the differences of gram-positive and gram-negative cell wall. Teichoic acid is responsible for the virulence of the gram-positive bacteria. Number one difference, peptidoglycan. Number 2 difference, teichoic acid. Number 3 difference, the gram-negative bacteria cell wall has an outer covering of the lipopolysaccharides, LPS, lipopolysaccharides. These lipopolysaccharides, they behave as endotoxins. They are responsible for the pathogenesis, for the virulence of the gram-negative bacteria. So, 3 differences are very much important of the gram-positive and gram-negative cell wall. Number 1 is peptidoglycan. Number 2 is teichoic acid. Number 3 is lipopolysaccharides. Number 4 difference, this is the periplasmic space. This space is present between the peptidoglycan layer of the cell wall and the cytoplasmic membrane. This is the periplasmic space, this space. This space is present only in the gram-negative bacteria. Periplasmic space is the site of the action of different enzymes. For the one of these enzymes very much important, these are the beta-lactamases. Beta-lactamase enzymes, it causes the breakdown of the beta-lactam drugs, antibiotics, like the penicillin G, like the cephalosporins. So, the periplasmic space is responsible where the beta-lactamase enzymes are found, and these beta-lactamases, it will cause the breakdown of the beta-lactam drugs when we use the antibiotics. They will cause these enzymes will cause the breakdown of these antibiotics, and they cause then the pathogenesis. So, this is the basic difference between the cell wall of the gram-positive and the gram-negative bacteria. The same 3 features, they are described in the tabulated form, which I have told you. These 3 differences are very important. There are other differences also, but these differences are very important. If anyone will ask you in the Viva exam, what are the most important components of the cell wall, or he or she can ask, what are the main differences between the gram-positive and gram-negative cell wall? First you will tell these 3 features, then the further features will come after that. These are the other characteristics, other differences between the cell wall of gram-positive and the gram-negative bacteria. This is endotoxins. I told you in the gram-negative bacteria, the outside the cell wall is a outermost covering which surrounds all around the cell. This is the lipopolysaccharide. It behaves as an endotoxin. Endotoxin stands for endo and toxin. Endo means it is the integral component of the cell wall. You will study in the microbiology exotoxins and endotoxins. These are two different terms. Exotoxins, exo stands for outside. Gram-positive bacteria, they secrete the exotoxins. Okay, exotoxin, they actively secrete the exotoxins. Gram-negative bacteria, they have endotoxin. Endotoxins are not secreted. They are the integral component of their cell wall of the gram-negative bacteria. The gram-negative bacteria also have the different polysaccharides, phospholipids and proteins, and these structures, they behave as an antigens. You will study immunology in the microbiology. Immunology deals with the antigen, antibody. The antigens, these are the foreign substances which will induce the formation of the antibody in our body, in the human body. They will induce the formation of antibodies. So, the antigens, these structures will behave as an antigens. And these antigens are very useful in the labs to diagnose, to identify any bacteria. Different bacteria have different antigens. So, by detecting their specific antigens, we can diagnose that if this bacteria, this causative organism, it has this antigen, it means these antigens are of that bacteria and we can identify the bacteria. In the gram-negative cell wall, there are certain structures which are called porins. This is the porin. These are the porin proteins. They act as a channel. They facilitate the movement, the passage of the hydrophilic substances, the different metals, vitamins, amino acids, sugars. The hydrophilic substances, the passage, they act as a channel to move these substances inside the cell. These porin proteins are present in the cell wall of the gram-negative bacteria and they are responsible for this passage of the cells. Here in this diagram, I will tell you in the next slide. Okay. There are some exceptions. I told you that all the bacteria we cannot see all the bacteria through the gram staining technique. There are few exceptions. Few bacteria we cannot see through the gram staining technique. Other microscopic techniques are used to see that bacteria, to visualize that bacteria. This is one of that example is Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which will cause the tuberculosis. This bacteria cannot be seen through the gram staining. To visualize this bacteria, if we are suspected that this patient sample has the Mycobacterium tuberculosis, we will stain that sample with the Ziehl-Neelsen stain. Ziehl-Neelsen stain. Through this staining procedure, we can visualize the Mycobacterium tuberculosis. This is also called the ZN stain, Ziehl-Neelsen stain. You will, don't worry, you will perform this staining procedure also in the lab. When inshallah you will come to the college, physically you will attend the lab, you will perform these procedures. Ziehl-Neelsen stain, this staining procedure is used to visualize the Mycobacterium tuberculosis. For those bacteria which are inability to be gram stained, why they are inability to be gram stained? Why we cannot see these bacteria under the why we cannot see these bacteria through the gram staining? This is because of their unusual cell wall. Their cell wall is not like the cell wall of the gram positive or the gram negative bacteria. They have unusual cell wall. They have certain structures in their cell wall which cannot be gram-stained. So, these bacteria are called acid-fast bacteria. Why they are called acid-fast bacteria? Because in the staining procedure, when we decolorize them with the ethanol, they resist the decolorization step. So they resist the decolorization step. So these bacteria are called the acid-fast bacteria. They resist the decolorization. This is not easy to decolorize them. So they resist the decolorization due to the high concentration of the lipids in their cell wall, which are called the mycolic acids. This is very important for your OSPE point of view. In the OSPE, for example, at the end of this lecture, I will show you one OSPE question of this acid-fast bacteria. Like this picture. This is the picture of the OSPE question. They will mark an arrow here, and under this picture there will be 2 or 3 questions. You have to answer these questions. First question will be what is the causative organism seen in this picture? You will see this blue staining. You will see this is Ziehl-Neelsen stain, and the causative organism which is shown in this picture, the arrow, it is Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which is acid-fast. Okay. The next question may be why it is acid-fast. You can say that because it resists the decolorization step. They can ask the reason why it is acid-fast, why it cannot be gram-stained. Then you will see that because its cell wall has high concentration of the lipids called the mycolic acids. This unusual nature of the cell wall is responsible for this bacteria to be not stained with the gram staining. So we use the other staining method, which is Ziehl-Neelsen stain. There are some bacteria which are called weakly acid-fast. What this term describes, why they are called weakly acid-fast. In this staining procedure, the regular strength of hydrochloric acid, which acts as a decolorizer, is used. If we use the same strength of decolorizer to decolorize those samples which have weakly acid-fast bacteria, it will decolorize them. But if we use the weaker strength of that solution, then these bacteria will resist the decolorization step. So they will say they are weakly acid-fast. If we use the regular strength, they will be decolorized. But if we use the weaker strength, the less concentrated solution of the hydrochloric acid, then they will resist the decolorization step and they will show their acid-fast nature. This is the example, Nocardia asteroides. This is the picture which describes the process of the Ziehl-Neelsen stain. In this stain, the first they will cover, here it is a beaker, in this is the water, and it is placed on any machine which can provide it heat. So we have to use the boiling water, which will produce the steam, which will produce the heat. So cover this, here is a glass slide, and on this glass slide there is a smear. Cover this smear with a basic dye which is called the Carbel-Fuchsin dye. Now recall your gram staining procedure. In the gram staining procedure, the first dye, which was the basic dye, was the crystal violet. In the Ziehl-Neelsen stain, the basic stain is the Carbel-Fuchsin, which is blue in color. Steam over boiling water for 8 minutes, intermittent steaming. And the stain will start boiling. Then we will wash it. This is a complete procedure. I will skip that procedure. Then we will counter stain with the methylene blue. Actually, why it is heated? This is the question they can ask. in the Zee-Nielsen stain, why you heat the smear? In the Gram staining, you did not heat the stain, the basic stain, which was poured on the smear. Okay, in the Zee-Nielsen stain, you will heat the smear, because this heating will melt the high concentration of lipids, the lipids layers which are high concentrated in the cell wall. It will melt that lipids, and the stain will penetrate deeply into the bacteria. If we will not heat it, the stain will not penetrate the high concentration of mycolic acid cell walls. So when we counter stain it with methylene blue, we will rinse it and then we'll examine. They will pink in color and the background will be blue. And this will be examined under the oil immersion 100x lens. Then we can see this mycobacteria. The same picture shows the procedure of the Zee-Nielsen stain. This is the structure of the cell wall of the Mycobacterium tuberculosis, the acid-fast bacteria. We will discuss about the peptidoglycan. This is the peptidoglycan layer, periplasmic space, and this cytoplasmic membrane. Outside the peptidoglycan layer are the arabinoglycans. And outside the arabinoglycans, this is the multiple layers of mycolic acids. Outer side, which is exposed to the exterior of the cell, and this is exposed towards the interior of the cell, towards the peptidoglycan layer. So this is the high concentration of lipids which are called the mycolic acids. This structure is responsible for the acid-fast nature of the Mycobacterium tuberculosis. I hope so this is clear. In this table, some bacteria are mentioned which are medically important bacteria that cannot be seen in the Gram stain. So different staining techniques are used. We will discuss in these bacteria step by step in the microbiology, but here they are just compiled, these 5-6 bacteria which cannot be seen in the Gram staining. First example is the Mycobacteria, Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Alternative techniques are the acid-fast staining, Zn stain. Why? This is the reason. This reason is very important. You must have to memorize the reasons why they cannot be stained Gram stain. This is most important. Why they are not? These are the reasons why these bacteria are not Gram stained. Then the next question will be, if these bacteria are not Gram stained, and this is the reason they are not Gram stained, then what will be the further techniques? This will be asked later on. First, this will be asked, why they are not Gram stained. Mycobacterium tuberculosis, because it has too much lipids, mycolic acids in their cell wall, so they cannot be Gram stained. This is a spirochete, Treponema. They are too thin to see. Reason is too thin to see. Mycoplasma pneumoniae, we have 2-3 times we talked about the mycoplasma, because they don't have the cell wall. They have the cell membrane, so we cannot see. Legionella pneumoniae, it is poor uptake of red counter stain. If we place the counter stain for a longer duration of time, for 3, 4, 5 minutes, then it can take the stain. But the regular timing, the normal timing for the counter staining is 1 or 2 minutes. In 1 or 2 minutes, poor uptake of red counter stain. Chlamydia, it is intracellular, very small, and intracellular. Those bacteria which are located inside the cells, it is difficult to be Gram stained. To visualize them, different staining techniques are used. They form different bodies. So we can stain these bodies, inclusion bodies. It means these inclusion bodies are the characteristic feature of this bacteria. How we can see, in this way we can see that bacteria. Rickettsia, it is also intracellular. So it is difficult to be seen in the Gram stain. Okay. Next, we will move to the peptidoglycan. Cell wall is composed of peptidoglycan. Peptidoglycan is derived from the glycan and peptides, amino acids and sugars. It is a combination of amino acids and sugars. Its synonyms are murein or mucopeptide. It can be asked through these names. What are the mureins? What are the mucopeptides? These are the synonyms for the peptidoglycan. It is a complex interwoven network of single covalently linked macromolecules. Single covalently linked macromolecules. These macromolecules have carbohydrate backbone. They have three components. Peptidoglycan have three components, subcomponents. Number one is the carbohydrate backbone. Number two is tetrapeptides, and number three are the peptide interbridges, interlinks, cross-links between these tetrapeptides. These are the peptide cross-links. Peptidoglycan is present only in the cell wall of the bacteria, or we can say that they are present in the cell wall of the prokaryotes. Peptidoglycan is absent in the cell wall of the eukaryotic cells. So, this difference is very much important between the prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. Eukaryotic cells means human body cells, human cells. So, this difference is important. Why this difference is important? For the selection of the antibiotics. We will choose the antibiotics which will cause the breakdown of the peptidoglycan. This antibiotic will not cause the breakdown of the eukaryotic cells or our cells, human body cells. This will not cause the breakdown of our cells. These antibiotics which act specially on the cell wall peptidoglycan, they are very effective in killing the bacteria. These antibiotics, they will kill the bacteria because they specifically act on the peptidoglycans. So, it is very important in the good target for the antibacterial drugs. I will discuss the peptidoglycan structure in detail. This is the structure of the peptidoglycan. I told you it has carbohydrate backbone, tetrapeptides and peptide crosslinks. In this picture, this is the carbohydrate backbone which has the alternating N-acetylglucosamine, N-acetylmuramic acid, N-acetylglucosamine, N-acetylmuramic acid, N-acetylglucosamine, N-acetylmuramic acid. This is the alternating carbohydrates. So, this is the carbohydrate backbone. With this these are interlinked through the glycosyl bonds, glycosyl linkages. To each of the N-acetylmuramic acid are attached tetrapeptides A, B, C, D. These are the tetrapeptides. These tetrapeptides they contain the amino acids, D amino acids or L amino acids. This composition is different in the different genus of the bacteria. Different bacteria has different amino acids, D isomers or L isomers. Mostly the L isomers are common. This is the end of this lecture. I will continue this lecture inshallah in my continue this topic in my next lecture. Then we will complete this structure of the bacterial cell. Please read it from your book, buy your books, textbooks, and read it. It will be easy for you to memorize, to understand it. If you feel any problem, you can discuss it with me. Thank you so much.